Welcome back, everyone. You're tuning into the virtual forum spotlighting 2 decades of excellence, nurturing future leaders in STEM, presented by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, Educational Partnership Program with Minority Serving Institutions. I'm Carmen Cummings. Thank you so very much for being with us. Nurturing future leaders. That's what the mission is all about. And also celebrating the successful collaboration between NOAA and the Cooperative Science Centers, which has resulted in training and graduating hundreds of students. Many of those faces you saw with a focus on eager, inquisitive minds from traditionally underrepresented minority communities in science fields relative to NOAA's mission. That mission is relative to this next session, passing the torch to the next generation. Joining us now is a Rattler alumna who is responsible for management of the undergraduate scholarship program and cooperative science centers. She's deep in the trenches on the team, which ensures that the program meets its goals of graduating and training the next generation of diverse candidates. Please welcome home Dr. Natasha D White.
Thank you so much, Carmen, for those very kind words, and it's always great to be home. It is my pleasure to introduce our session leader, but prior to doing that, I wanted to call attention to the Q&A button as well as the chat where questions may be asked during each section. During this plenary session, we highly encourage students who are in attendance to please ask questions and interact with our panel. So it is my esteemed honor to present the leader of our Plenary 2 session, passing the torch to the next generation STEM workforce, Ms. Nicole Labeouf. Ms. Labeouf is the Acting Assistant Administrator for NOAA's National Ocean Service. She provides the strategic vision needed to lead the implementation of activities that support the Ocean Service's priorities of safe and efficient transportation and commerce, preparedness and risk reduction, and stewardship tourism and recreation. With over 20 years of scientific and program management experience, Ms. Labeouf has worked on a range of issues from protected species conservation and oil spill response to international treaty negotiation. Ms. Labeouf holds a bachelor's degree in marine biology from Texas A&M University and a master's degree in sustainable development and conservation biology from the University of Maryland. She is a strong supporter of the EPP MSI program and a key member of NOAA's leadership team. Please welcome Ms. Nicole Labeouf.
Thank you, Natasha. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Awesome. Okay, always have to ask, right? So I think that someone's going to help share slides for me here in just a moment. So while those are popping up, I just want to say welcome to the students and the faculty and all of our NOAA co-conspirators in this really important and honorable work of recruiting the next generation of NOAA scientists, right? The next generation of the STEM workforce, of course. Thank you so much for having me. As was just said, my name is Nicole Buff. I'm the Acting Assistant Administrator of NOAA's National Ocean Service. I am absolutely honored to serve as your session lead for today's session, passing the torch to the next generation STEM workforce. And I know I'm supposed to give you NOAA's perspective on the importance of training the next generation of STEM professionals, and I will. But first, I want you to know that this was a little bit of a challenge for me to come here today, because what I learned was not only was I going to get to talk to you about how important you all are to our work, not just now, but in the future, but I was told that I might get some extra points for doing a Pecha Kucha style slide deck. Now, I had never even heard of that before, so it threw me for a loop, but you know, that's life and we rise to challenges. So I'm gonna give it a try and I'm gonna do it, I'll say my way, as we do, right? I did it my way. So I'm gonna do it my way. I'm gonna use 2 images per slide. And I think as that slide deck is being shared, I'm gonna note the reason I did that is actually quite important. That's because for at least my experience, my life and my career, I have found that it is as important to recognize where you've been and what you've been through and who you've been through that with when you get to each new place as anything else. And how are they related to one another? Sometimes it's not obvious, but if we think that way, if we really try and take what we've learned from one part of our lives and use it in the next, then you're absolutely building blocks in your life, and you're moving from one thing to another in a way that is informed and wiser than where you were before. Thinking like this keeps me grounded. It helps me focus on learning everything I can at each stage of my life. And it reminds me that all of my experiences, the good ones and the not so good ones, make me who I am today. So as we pass the torch, I hope that you'll remember that we are also passing each stage of our life on to the next in our journey. And whatever path you're on, you are absolutely building from one to the next, one part of your life to the next. And so with that, oh, fantastic, there it is. So you'll see sort of a contrast on this first slide. There's me as a kiddo, and then me kind of now, almost now, pre-pandemic. And with that, I guess let's go ahead and turn the next slide, and we'll start. I'll try this Pecha Kucha thing for you. Okay. I grew up along the Texas Gulf Coast with an instinctive and actively curated love of the outdoors and nature. I love the beach, fishing, camping, and just being outside where I could watch and listen to our planet and what it had to say. Thanks to my grandmother, I became a birder among adults at a very young age. My grandmother was my mentor and inspiration. She loved to garden and cook and dance and travel and to watch birds wherever we were. She taught me that I could be anything I wanted to be and that I should endeavor to do just that, even though others might say what I could or could not do. And I don't think we're advancing the slides. Maybe, there we go. Okay, so that was the last slide. All right, Pecha Kucha. All right, her support and authentic way of living modeled confidence even when I didn't have it for myself. Still, I've known from a very early age, even teenage years, that I wanted to work with and for the ocean. Like many, I was drawn to those amazing animals that we call charismatic megafauna, whales, turtles, and yes, dolphins. But first things first, I had to get through being a rebellious teenager, and I had to make my way out of my Texas hometown and on to college. There were people in my life that said I was not college material, but I found my voice in debate and extemporaneous speaking. And I thought I needed to become a lawyer to fight for the ocean and everything that lived there. But life had its own ideas, and being a lawyer was not one of them. Being around dolphins sure was. Marine biology became my path, and dolphin rescue was my hobby. It was a great way to meet people, sit in cold water on the beach, and finally help the ocean firsthand. It was a far cry from being dressed up for a debate round, but I took a leap of faith that I could do it. Dolphin rescue taught me a lot, and I learned to appreciate these incredible animals, whether they were alive or dead. Necropsies were the name of the game, and I wore masks before masks were cool, and the blood on my hands was about curiosity and science. I was well on my way to being a bona fide marine biologist. I wasn't good at math, but I hoped I could make it through. Make it through I did. My grandmother was so proud of me. So was my mom. My mom was my best friend and biggest fan up until she passed away a few years ago. I still miss her love and support, but she taught me to follow my own path, whatever that might be, including when I applied for a job at NOAA on a dare and moved far away from Texas for the first time. My love of NOAA gave me the chance to come out of the lab and into an office to work on marine mammal conservation. Hey, Nicole, we're ahead of slide. If you could just get us back in sync there. Talk about a dream job. I rekindled my love of birds and I got to travel, spreading my wings in all respects, I started working on international treaties and was seeing the world and experiencing life like never before. Working hard for dolphins, I went to Mexico, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Panama, Canada, and the list goes on. I met the most amazing people wherever I went, making lifelong friends and getting the best food a girl could find. That's when I learned that when your heart is open, the world is waiting for you. After about 10 years at NOAA, I was beginning to feel like I was on the right path, but I was surrounded by people who supported me. And I was becoming more and more confident in who I wanted to be as a person. But what did I want to be professionally? I still wasn't sure. I was building my network and asking my friends for their advice. Before long, I was working for the birds, seabirds to be specific, in Norway, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, Argentina, Chile, and Ecuador. I found I had a love of diplomacy and international negotiations, and I helped the ocean, not just in the United States, but around the world. I fell in love with the Southern Hemisphere, and I lived in Tasmania for a while. I never felt so at home anywhere in the world. It was amazing to get to help the albatross of the Southern Ocean. I was still working for NOAA, but I was missing my friends and family. I knew sooner or later I'd have to stop this nomadic lifestyle and find a portfolio that kept me closer to home. Then came Deepwater Horizon. I was known for finding solutions, so NOAA asked me to take on the challenge of negotiating with BP to make sure that NOAA didn't have to foot the bill for our work to clean up the oil. I knew nothing about oil spill response at the time, but in the course of learning, I met so many incredible people, all there to help the ocean like me. For nearly 2 years, I went back and forth to Louisiana, where I met Larry Robinson, and where I was reminded of my love of food and where I reconnected with my extended family. Working the oil spill taught me even more about myself and what I wanted to do with my life. As NOAA's response to Deepwater Horizon spun down, I landed another marine mammal job with NOAA and connected with people I'd met from previous roles. One of the most important lessons I was learning is that I could come and go from one job to the next at NOAA and always feel at home if I kept the people that supported me in my heart and top of mind. That realization allowed me to take another leap of faith and move to a very different part of NOAA in a leadership position. I was really nervous at first, but guess what? NOAA is a truly special place no matter where you are. The mission in every corner of NOAA is as good as the next. And the people, they are awesome too. And because I was moving up in the organization, I could see more of the good work all around me. I could also really help people do their jobs. As much as anything, that's what I was there to do, enable the good work of others. Charting my own course as a leader has been challenging, but I never tried to be something that I wasn't. I mostly act on instinct and what feels authentic to me. I stay true to myself. I try to find common ground with others, treat people with dignity and respect, and stay as strong as I can when times are tough. I also stay in touch with my gratitude. I find that it buoys me when I'm feeling lost and reconnects me to the people and the places that I come from. For me, gratitude and a bit of downtime are the secrets of my own personal resilience. And I've got to get in touch with the ocean whenever possible. If there's dolphins around, I'm completely at peace. I've often wished I could tell the ocean how hard we're all working to do right by it. In a strange way, I feel like dolphins and birds know that we do that at NOAA. I'd like to believe that's the case. And maybe I'll just tell myself it's true so that I can be rest assured that they know that at least some humans care. People often ask me what it's like to be a leader, as a scientist or as a woman, but I really only know what it's like to be me. As I pass the torch to you all, I hope you see that it's not just one light that guides your way. It's all of the events and the people who care about you, what you learn about yourself, and how all of these things act upon one another to influence who you become. And with that, I will end my attempt at a Pechakucha, and I would like to address the issue at hand, NOAA's commitment to the next generation of STEM professionals. NOAA's science mission is driven by the need that the public has, and we are truly interdisciplinary. While traditional science will continue to be important, the oceans and the coasts are changing, and the future will look like nothing we've seen before. Without opening ourselves to our nation's full diversity within our workforce and our partnerships, our input data, our attitudes, and our outcomes will be full of biases, unconscious or otherwise, meaning that our efforts won't be as innovative or as durable as they might be otherwise. You all are critical partners in advancing our collective goal to provide the science, resource management, and innovative solutions to real-world problems in communities around our country. Fortunately for NOAA, we are attracting and supporting new talent through the EPP, the Holling Scholar Program, and other efforts that focus on recruiting the very best as the next generation of NOAA scientists and managers from MSIs and other partners. Since 2001, the National Ocean Service has hosted 110 EPP MSI undergraduate scholars for summer internships. Since 2016, NOS has hosted 32 graduate internships for Cooperative Science Center students. Currently, NOS has 10 employees that have either received undergraduate or graduate support from EPP MSI. Most of those employees are in federal positions. We can do more, and we are doing more. Recently, NOS and NOAA's Office of Education identified a new competitive pathway, meaning no public job advertisement, and funding to bring CSC graduates into the NOAA workforce. Students who attended NOAA partnership institutions and have graduated with either a master's or a PhD between May of 2020 and May of 2021 have the opportunity to pursue at least 4 time-limited positions that approximate postmasters and postdoctoral fellowships. I'm excited to share that we've already made one selection from CSERT, and I encourage other students to apply. The sooner the better, as we have set April 16th as the closing date for these announcements. If students or other recent graduates are interested in these opportunities, please contact your center director who has the position announcements and information for you. Thank you for your time today. And last but not least, I'm honored to introduce our next speaker and session moderator, Latoya Miles. Latoya is an advocate for the next generation of scientists who represent many different backgrounds and communities. This photo of Latoya captures her and her NOAA supervisor, her postdoc advisor, and one of her collaborators from last year. As science evolves, so does our community of scientists. Knowing this in her heart, Latoya is passionate about creating opportunities for students to join the scientific community and to contribute to NOAA's mission. With that, Latoya, I turn the mic over to you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I really do appreciate it. And so I enjoyed so much learning about your background, because I think the call today is full of students who have lived along the Gulf Coast, and I'm a Mississippi native, so I enjoy the Gulf Coast as well. And I will share my screen so that you can see my slides. So what I want to talk about today in introducing the panel is I'd like to spend just a couple of moments acknowledging the amount of change that has happened in our world, whether that's global, national, and community scale. We've seen more change this year than we have in most of our lifetimes. And when we think about that and the amount of change that we have experienced, I think that saying change is hard is an understatement these days. But then also, I think we have seen so much change, not only in our personal lives, but in our professional lives. And in thinking about that, not only have we experienced change with public health crises and with community crises across our country, Also, our science has changed. We've had changing environments, more severe weather. We've had changing community. The face of NOAA science has changed in recent decades. We've also had changing technology that helps us do our science and policy work. And it reminds me of the fact that we have to be nimble and flexible and adaptable in these times, which is to me the gist of that comment from Charles Darwin. So going more into my own story, what you will see is on this slide, I'm a very proud alumna of Alcorn State University, which is located in Mississippi, as well as I'm a FAMU Rattler, as several of us are on the call today. And I cannot underestimate and speak as well about the influence that faculty and staff at these two institutions have had on my career and my life. When I think back to being a high school student and first enrolling at Alcorn State University and leaving home for the first time, I was just like our previous speaker, Ms. Jackson, thinking I would go into the medical field because I was good at science. However, when I arrived at Alcorn State University, the world of science opened up to me in a way that it never had before. And I learned that there were so many other disciplines. There was chemistry and physics, and then there are subdisciplines of organic chemistry and inorganic chemistry and physical chemistry that made my world so much richer. And I had just an inquisitiveness and curiosity that I wanted to pursue. And so I stayed with those majors of chemistry and biology. But then after graduating, that led me to the Environmental Sciences Institute at Florida A&M University, now School of the Environment, where I was able to apply those scientific principles to answer real world questions, to understand how, in my case, how the atmosphere works, how the chemistry of the atmosphere affects our world, our health as humans, and then the health of our environment as well. And the foundation for all of that learning, all of that science came from these two HBCUs. The next phase of my journey was supported by the NOAA Educational Partnership Program. When I was a graduate student at Florida A&M University, I was able to go on my first field experiment outside of Tampa, Florida. And this is a photo of me with my equipment from my first field study. As someone who had been in the laboratory and undergraduate, I was a novice at field work, going into the field, measuring samples in real time, looking at data as it's coming in from all of the different instrumentation was truly exciting for me. And EPP made that possible. I was able to participate in this large-scale field study where I had collaborators from other universities, other federal agencies, local and state agencies, where we were all trying to answer questions about the health of Tampa Bay from an atmospheric and a biospheric perspective. And I do have to say, during that time, as a fellow of EPP, I was able to have my first publications. And for those of you who are students who are considering pursuing careers at NOAA and or at academia, I cannot stress enough how having a publication before you graduate is critically important. And EPP supported me so that I could have publications by the time I graduated. And as you'll notice on these two publications that I had, there's a familiar name there as one of my co-authors, President Larry Robinson. He was my mentor and advisor, and I actually call him my forever mentor because I still learn so much from him all of the time. After being in graduate school at Florida A&M University, I transitioned to the NOAA office where I currently work. And this is actually a photo of our building. And I've heard it described in many ways as quaint. It doesn't look like an office building. It doesn't look like a laboratory, but there's so much rich history in this building. This building was part of the Manhattan Project in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and has been around since 1948. And we have had some measure of science or health medicine in this building ever since that time. And so there's that history to me is very important. We start thinking about how science has evolved and changed over time. And so I started out as a young scientist, an early career person entering into this building, learning how to collaborate with NOAA colleagues and with our partners from other institutions, building up my scientific credentials, doing even more field studies. And all of that work happens out of this one building in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And now, as I serve as director of those staff in that building, the Atmospheric Turbulence and Diffusion Division, I start thinking about how the science that happens in that building also happens out in the environment. And these are two photos from one of our meteorological towers that we have installed that goes above the tree canopy here in East Tennessee. And so you'll see every so often along this tower, we have measurements of wind direction and wind speed and temperature. These photos remind me that science is all around us all the time, whether we notice this or not, whether we're cognizant of it or not. There's science that's happening within each of our communities. We just have to be aware of what's going on. And as scientists, we have that curiosity to be able to take the knowledge and skills that each of us have as undergraduate students, graduate students, and professionals to be able to contribute in a really meaningful way to some of the scientific questions that are being asked within our own communities. Another important lesson that I learned along the way is the importance of mentoring. So this photo shows one of my typical field studies and scientific experiments that we had set up in Illinois within a cornfield to try to understand the dynamics of atmospheric chemistry in agricultural ecosystems. And I had two students who were from Florida A&M University who worked with me. These are guys from Florida. We traveled with them to central Illinois to set up this equipment in a cornfield, and they had the absolute best time. It was such a unique experience for all of us to be able to be so hands-on in the science in this way. And I learned important lessons about mentorship from President Robinson and other faculty and staff members who supported me along the way. And then this picture makes me remember how important it is for me to pass along those lessons that I've learned about being a good mentor, about creating opportunities for students, about helping students to succeed. We cannot underestimate just how important that is. And so when I look at this picture of how hard the guys worked when we were out in the field and all of the lessons they learned, not only about science, but about engineering and how to build systems, that it's important to have wonderful mentors out there that we can connect to students. And then this final slide shows, again, some of the instrumentation that I have in the field. And I will link this back to my first slide about change. One of the most exciting aspects of my career at NOAA has been field work, going out for projects in different ecosystems. This photo happens to be a system that we installed in Delaware before the pandemic hit. And I would just say that's when I see this system, I see the work that we put into it, I see the beautiful scenery behind it, and I understand the connection between the science questions that we're asking and how we're trying to maintain and improve the health of salt marsh ecosystems like this one. I can't wait to get back out into the field. I can't wait to support my staff as they go out into the field and conduct this science, because it reminds me of how important it is. This photo, you see atmosphere, you see biosphere, and understanding the interactions of that is key to what we're doing in the NOAA Air Resources Laboratory that's located in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And I'm excited to get back to that work someday. And I hope that we'll have opportunities for students to join us in that work in the near future. So now we'll move into introductions of all of our panel members. Panel members, if you could turn on your cameras. We will go in alphabetical order. So we'll start with Angel, then go to Martine, Melanie, and then PJ. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everybody. So just a quick question. Do I just share my slides or will they appear on the screen?
Please share.
All right, thank
You see screen share, sir?
It's not letting me. Let me share. Oh, now I can see it. Yeah, great. All right. All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is a great pleasure to be here speaking to you. So my name is Angel Adames-Corraliza, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And I'm just gonna give you a quick overview about my professional journey, my personal life, and trying to like adhere to this template that we're gonna try to do today. So I'll start off a little bit about myself. So I'm originally from Puerto Rico, from the town of San Sebastian. Here's a nice arrangement of pictures, you know, with the lower left picture being showing the just a sunset in my hometown in San Sebastian. The second picture just kind of shows you where San Sebastian is in Puerto Rico. And then the third one just shows where Puerto Rico is in the Caribbean, just so you all know where this is at. I grew up in San Sebastian. I went to school there all the way up to high school. And when I was a kid growing up in San Sebastian, I was really obsessed over just looking at clouds. So a lot of people will find that kind of weird, especially other kids, but I've just thought that the clouds were really pretty and really interesting to look at. They would come into my hometown in the morning. They just come in like in a parade. You know, the morning would be like clear blue, nothing in the sky, and then these clouds would roll in. And as the day progressed, they would like turn into thunderstorms and it would rain a lot. And then it'll end like at 3 p.m. And then the rest of the afternoon would be clear. And it would occur like clockwork, especially during the summer. And I was always curious as to what that happened. And to be honest, I'm still very curious about that today. And you can see these are not pictures of me when I was a kid. These are actually pretty recent pictures of me flying into and out of Puerto Rico, just looking at the clouds out of the window plane seat. And I just think that they're amazing. And to be honest, I thought that this probably was one of the early signs that I really liked atmospheric science and science in general. But another one was that I really liked watching these documentaries that the Discovery Channel had back then. One of them was like Raging Planet, and they would like have like a Spanish dub version that would appear on Puerto Rico TV. You know, like in Spanish it would be like Desata la Furia or something like that. And to me, these were like the most like awesome videos I saw as a kid. Even though I actually saw them recently, and they're actually pretty cringe now that you're like actually a scientist and understand what's actually going on in a lot of the physical models, you know, and like a lot of the physical mechanisms that are happening. But as a kid, they were great. But a turning point didn't happen until I was like 10 years old or so. And Hurricane George hit the island. It was a Cat 2, Cat 3 hurricane. It kind of just went right through the middle of the island. And back then, it was the most damaging hurricane the island has seen. It, you know, of course, this actually got like smashed recently by Hurricane Maria, which was way more destructive than Hurricane George ever was. But still, you know, back then, George was like essentially like the big one with Hugo in '89. And it just really got me thinking as to why does Mother Nature this way? Why do these things happen in general? And it kind of just really got me going. And I think with that, combined with my obsession with these maps, so the newspapers in Puerto Rico would like often come with these maps where you can track a hurricane. And me being weird and a nerd, as I've always been, I really like to get a pencil and just track every single hurricane every single season. And I would just like call it a dots and plot things. It was a great exercise for me as a kid. And then my parents actually saw that, and that combined with Hurricane George, my mom one day and my dad like told me, it's like, you know, maybe you should study meteorology, you know? And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Of course, there aren't any meteorology majors that you can pursue in Puerto Rico. And actually, you know, like I don't think we had the resources for me to like go to the US and study atmospheric sciences. So instead, I went to the University of Puerto Rico in Mayagüez and studied physics, where that program actually has like a certificate in atmospheric sciences. By the way, I Googled this image that you can see here on the right, and the logo of the University of Puerto Rico is seen on the left. I studied physics, 4 years there in physics. And during that time, something really important for my career actually happened. And that is that during my sophomore year, I applied for internship programs. And out of some weird like loophole of life or something, I don't know, I ended up like talking to NCAS and with them back then, Vernon Morris, about a potential collaboration with the University of Washington, specifically with the Joint Institute of the Study of the Atmosphere and Ocean. And they told me that this would be in the University of Washington. I had no idea where that was actually back then. I didn't know that this was all the way in Seattle, on the other side of the US. Because when you're in Puerto Rico, all you know about the US, like from TV shows and stuff is like New York and Florida and whatever. Even though you kind of know that the US is really big, you kind of really don't know how big the US is until you actually like take a flight across the whole country and realize that it's like a 6-hour flight from one side to the other side, especially if you're going from east to west. Anyways, long story short, I ended up agreeing to this internship program. So I went to Seattle and did my first research project that you see here pictured on the right. And that ended up like changing my career path in many ways. And one way is that I ended up loving going to Seattle so much that I ended up applying for grad studies there and ended up getting into the program. So I did my PhD work at the University of Washington in the Department of Atmospheric Sciences from 2010 to 2016. Here's a picture. I think that is like a very accurate picture that I Google of Washington because it's cloudy and it's drizzling and there's this W in there. I think that makes the image fairly accurate. It is in the winter, it's a pretty drizzly place. And I just wanted to mention here that, even though I did finish my PhD and overall, it was a very positive experience. As somebody who grew up in the tropics with like fair weather cumulus every day and sunshine, it was really hard for me to transition to a place where the sun never comes out during the winter. And combined with being one of the few Latino people in the university and the department as a whole was a very challenging experience for me. And I think it's very important for me to like even tell you that even though I did get a PhD there were like a lot of setbacks and a lot of difficulties that I went through that I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking to you, but feel free to like talk to me after I'm done speaking or send me an email. We can chat any other time. After that, I did a postdoc at GFDL at one of the NOAA labs. That is, this one is actually in Princeton. And I did this from 2016 and 2018, which was another opportunity that just kind of came out of nowhere. And it ended up being a great experience for me. And like I learned a lot about how NOAA works back then and ended up like understanding a lot of what it takes to actually make a good forecast model and a good climate model, which was an interesting experience for me. And after that, I've been moving around over the place, but the most recent location where I'm located now is at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, which is pictured below. And of course, like if people know about Wisconsin and Wisconsin football, you're probably familiar with Bucky the Badger, which here is like holding some kind of lightning bolt because now I'm in atmospheric sciences. And, when you do meteorology, I guess a lightning bolt is one of those things that you see in meteorology. So anyways, I'm a professor here now. I do a lot of things as professors do. And one of the things that I do is that I lead my research group made by grad students, postdocs, and undergrads. We refer to it as the Large Scale Dynamics and General Circulation Group. The website is on the top, afadames.com. I have 4 grad students, H.C. Luo, Chelsea Knight, Rosa Vargas Martes, Kayleen Torres Maldonado, who was actually a former EPP fellow, which I think is noteworthy, and a postdoc, Victor Raul Chavez Maita. And together, we actually research a broad range of topics, including tropical convection, general circulation, tropical motion systems, including tropical waves, tropical depressions, Madden-Julian oscillation, and of course, climate change. Of course, research is not the only thing that I do. And one of the points that I wanted to get across to you is that not everything in life is work. And I think it's really important to try to find some balance in your life. So here's a picture of me and my students on the left. Here's a picture of us getting coconut milk, this Chinese brand of coconut milk, which, by the way, is delicious. And if you haven't tried it, you should definitely try it. And then on the right, a picture of us happily eating, I think this is a Korean barbecue. And I'm showing specifically pictures of food because I think food is one of the things that universally makes everybody happy. And of course, you can see the authentic happiness here in the picture with maybe a little bit of elements of like, why are we hanging out with your advisor? Because the advisor is definitely a weirdo that likes to eat and likes to invite everybody to eat when that is the occasion it happens. So here's a picture of food. of course, one of the goals that I have as a faculty is to make an academia and a welcoming environment for everybody. And this is why I do these meal things to like make the group building and make everybody feel like they're part of the community. But ultimately, I think that we need to make changes in the academic system in order for it to be welcoming for everybody, not just for people like myself who come from a Latin American background, but everybody in general. And I think that we have a big task in front of us in order to make the academic environment not just be welcoming, but also represent the demographic of this country. By the way, this is a picture that I took. This one I did not Google. This is definitely mine. And last but not least, I, just wanted to make that goal. But if you all have questions for me, I am more than happy to answer them for you. Thank you for your time. It is a great pleasure and an honor to be here speaking to you today. My contact information is below. Here's a picture of a cloud and a thunderstorm that I think is really cool because I am still weird and I'm still a nerd and I love clouds still because why would you want to change when you like things when you were a kid? You still like them as an adult? I haven't grown up. That's okay. And that's okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. I like clouds too. All right, great presentation. Martine, you're up next.
Thank you, Dr. Myles. Good afternoon, everybody. It is really a great honor to be here in this forum. I'm trying to upload my, let me know if you actually see the presentation that I am going to show. Okay, let's see. Let me know if it's working because I cannot see you anymore.
You're good.
Very good. So again, thank you for this wonderful opportunity. It is truly an honor to be here. I think myself 20 years ago, and I find that I was not behind a camera giving a speech to more than 200 participants, but I was rather starting a journey of enlightenment through a process that started for me in La Paz, Bolivia, where I come from. La Paz is a city that is located at 12,000 feet over the sea level. And being the son of a geologist, I started developing a deep passion for the outdoors, for the mountains, for the rocks, for the air, for everything that was outside of the apartment where we live. So once I graduated from high school, I decided to go and become a biologist. And I went to the only school in the country that actually offered that career. With that, I give you an idea of the environment in which I developed, in which I live. So I studied biology for 5 years at the Universidad Mayor de San Andres, where I also developed some passion for chasing, collecting, dissecting, and analyzing tropical fish, which is something that took me to the Amazon basin and many of the tributaries and all the rivers that will be part of that system, which also allowed me to meet some very interesting people that would come from all over the world, because they were also trying to understand the phylogeny and the relationships that existed between tropical fish in this part of the continent, as well as other parts of the world, in the African continent, for instance. And so I made some pretty interesting connections there. And also I started thinking that, you know what, if I want to advance this further, I cannot stay here, and I need to figure out where else I can further my education. And so through some help from Conservation International and the Worldwide Foundation, I got the opportunity to move from this beautiful city at the foothills of this majestic mountain in La Paz to another majestic place in the world, New York City. Now, I must tell you that once in New York, you know, things can be a little bit rough when you try to start your path in life, because New York can be very welcoming, but it can be very rough as well. So I started trying to figure out, what do I do now? I'm in this big city with a lot of passion for what I want to do in my life, but not so many resources. Where do I start? And is that an opportunity came. 126th Street, Upper Manhattan, City College of New York. I saw some announcements in one of the newspapers that you could find in city that the City College was offering opportunities for those that had foreign degrees, which it was my case. I had already become a biologist, but the process of validating all those credits and the process of making sure that you have all the elements you need to just go to school weren't quite there for me. So City College, through this announcement in one of those local newspapers, opened an opportunity. And sure enough, I went and I enrolled with the Earth and Atmospheric Science Department at the City College of New York. And it's this man that is on the picture, Professor Edward Hyman, that actually gave me a break, because he convinced me that you know how to collect data. Granted that I was collecting data at the tropical level. I want to take you to the mountains of Colorado, and so we can start collecting snowflakes and super cool droplets, so you can do some analysis and see what happens there. Sure enough, I went with Professor Hyman to beautiful Storm Peak Laboratory. During 2 winters, I learned to ski, but most importantly, I learned to work under unbelievable conditions in snowstorms at 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to collect those super cool droplets that he was so very interested in having. As a result of that, something else came along, and it was my liking of some satellite imagery that was used to correlate the snow water equivalent and the snow bed where we were collecting in situ. Sure enough, I got some funding and I was able to get a master's degree in atmospheric science at the City College of New York. But something happened. And this is what happened. I think this was the biggest break in my career. NOAA's Educational Partnership Program with Minority Serving Institutions. I know some folks are not going to be very happy that I put their pictures here. And as you may have noticed by now, I have not really followed the Pecha Kucha requirements that have to have 2 pictures per slide. But well, there's some method to my madness, and this is the way that I'm going to tell the story. Chantal Haskins, wherever you are, thank you so very much. Jacqueline Rousseau, you really gave me the break that the rest of my career is really indebted to you. I couldn't find pictures for Victoria Dancy, Linda Belton, and Serena Tucker. But once I was an intern, they gave me all the support that I needed to continue. Louisa Koch, you already heard her. I owe her a great deal of mentoring, unofficial mentoring. Professor Camille Bardi, Congressman Serrano, Manson Brown in that picture. Of course, the CREST Center at the time, now the Cesar, Shaquilla Merchant, thank you so much. But most importantly, this man right here, Dr. Jerry Dittberner, he did something that the rest of the folks in the picture had already done with me. He truly believed in what I could do. He gave me an opportunity, I took it, and I ran with it. And as a testament of that is that the other day, somebody sent me a very nice picture of me on my first day of the internship. Look at that guy. So naive and so not knowing what to do with their life. But if it wouldn't be for the Educational Partnership Program, I would not be here. And I am very grateful for that. So once I got into the EPP system, I started with internships. I went to Colorado to learn more about passive remote sensing. I went to Silver Spring where I worked with some satellite experts that taught me more about satellite imagery that I so much love, and the different opportunities and the unlimited reach that I could do by understanding how this works and how can you use technology to apply the passion that is already there. So I went in a second internship, and then not enough with that, I was accepted at the graduate program with EPP, which is what landed me the job with NOAA in NESD, the satellite service. So what has happened in NESDIS has been a process of transformation for me. In the words of Vice Admiral Manson Brown, former Assistant Secretary for Environmental Observations in NOAA, Martin, you need to feel comfortably uncomfortable. Otherwise, you're not growing. And part of feeling comfortably uncomfortable means understanding what you do, understanding what your team does, understanding what your organization needs to do, so you can anticipate to what it needs to be done in a macro scale. And so I went and I had 2 or 3 jobs within the satellite service in which I learned the power of our observing system assets, the needs for data, how can you process data, how can you evaluate data, how can you prioritize data so others can use this information to generate products that make the difference, that make a whole universe of difference for those that need to make decisions. And I became an expert in satellite data, as well as the observing systems that generate those zeros and those ones that then are transferred to our computers. Not only that, you become a subject matter expert, you understand what your organization does, but then you need to figure out what else you need to complete your equation. It's a journey of introspection. You need to understand what else is missing, what you're capable of. And let me tell you, once you get to know your science and once you get to know how the decisions are made, how can you influence policy, how can you navigate your organization, you become quite powerful. And then you need to understand how can you help others realize those goals and fulfill the mission that your agency is giving you the opportunity to. So I went on a journey of leadership now. I got to work for several NOAA administrators. I got to do very important training in NOAA. And well, I got to enjoy the benefits of being part of one of the best, if not the best agency around the world. As you heard Ben Freeman before, from the bottom of the ocean to the surface of the sun and everything in between, unlimited possibilities. One of the things that I have learned in this journey is the power of networking. And someone had mentioned prior to me that that comes also associated with mentoring. No matter if you decide to have a path in academia, private sector, international organizations, non-governmental organizations, you will need to learn to collaborate. Nicole Buff was the perfect example in her wonderful presentation. You really don't know exactly what you want until you're there. And when you're there, well, it's your ability to talk, to communicate, and to negotiate, and to learn what is needed for you to obtain funding, for you to be successful and transitioning research to operations, research to service. Most importantly, to understand what is needed. I can tell you right now, you're not going to be able to do it alone. So for all of you that are thinking about the government or the private sector, no matter what path you take, you need to understand your strengths and weaknesses. You need to understand your science very well. You need to understand your environment. As Latoya said, this is a changing world and it's a changing science. Dr. Jackson, in her remarks prior to this panel, mentioned that there's the equity of technology, the equity of education. Think of those terms for yourself. What is the right equity for you to really achieve your goals and understand that when you put it all together, you become something very powerful. But remember, again, it doesn't happen at all. It takes a village. This is my team in NESDIS, 35 individuals that works towards a common goal, and that they're very happy and content to follow if you are very good at convincing that you are doing the right thing. Put others first, and you'll see how they take care of you as well. Last but not least, don't forget what really matters. Some of you may try to figure out, I am looking to have money. I want to make more money. Some others may think that I want to be recognized for what I do. And some others may think that, I want to be happy. Well, it's all up to you. I can guarantee you that you can make money, you can be recognized, and you can be happy. It will not happen overnight, that's for sure. You have to take the steps and not the elevator, as my next slide says. But know that NOAA as an organization is a unique place where you will find all those three aspects if you learn how to put it all together. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity, and I pass it back to you again, Latoya.
Thank you so much, Martine, for those comments and for that wonderful presentation. So keeping the session moving, we're going to have a presentation from Dr. Melanie Okoro.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today at the 10th Biennial NOAA EPP and MSI Education and Science Forum. My name is Melanie Okoro, and I am a former NOAA scientist turned entrepreneur. And I'm here to share with you my journey as I transition from an entrepreneur as I transition from a scientist to an entrepreneur. One of the stories I like to tell in my journey is that, quite frankly, all things are connected. The experiences that you had in the past, the ones that you're currently having, and those that will shape the future are all a combination of your experiences in life. And as Nicole talked about earlier in the presentation, it really is those experiences that shape who you interact with, the experiences that you have, and really the life that you will have for yourself. So my presentation will be a little bit different, and that I'm going to share with you my journey. And in that journey, provide for you some of the tools and techniques that really you can use, whether you decide to be a scientist, go into research, academia, or even into the private sector. One of the first fundamental elements of being an entrepreneur is really building your knowledge, right? So transitions are all a part of the process. As you transition from a student to a mid-year or early career professional, there will be changes in your life that you'll have to experience, right? So right now, you might be working on being a technician, right? Which is an expert in the practical application of science. But in particular, you might be skilled in a certain craft or technique, one that allows you to acquire new skills as you move throughout your professional career. You might even become a specialist in that particular area. You might be assigned to tasks or duties that you have to complete every single day. But as you go through that process, understand that you're building the knowledge that you'll need to progress throughout your career. And for me, I've had the opportunity to work in many different environments, building that knowledge. From working in urban streams in Maryland, to conducting research in wetlands and urban environments, to working with many different individuals and stakeholders who have various missions and visions. But along the way, you're honing your skills and you're building your craft and you're acquiring the knowledge that you need to transition in the next phase of your career. During my transition from graduate student into the field of science as a professional, I had the wonderful opportunity to be a part of the NOAA Graduate Scientist Program through the Educational Partnership Program. And in that, it allowed me to really focus on and align my goals with what my values were. And as you know, being a part of NOAA, it's about three main goals: the science, our service, as well as stewardship. One of the most important aspects of being a part of any organization is understanding the culture. Okay? So right now I'm an entrepreneur, but when I was a key member at NOAA, I was really bought into the culture of science, service, as well as stewardship. Making sure that I was focused on the task at hand, identifying and participating in scholarly activities with my colleagues, or even supporting volunteership opportunities. I was actively engaged in near peer mentorship opportunities, but I was simply committed to professional growth and development. As I moved throughout my career and became an entrepreneur, what I took from my time at NOAA was that it would require me to do some of those steps that I talked about earlier, which was simply to focus on the task at hand, but to continue to develop those relationships, seek out professional development, and identify those scholarly activities, such as the ones today, where I knew it was going to help support the next generation of scientists. It's so important to cultivate your network. So when I hear my other colleagues, such as Martin, talk about making sure that you have a strong network, it's invaluable to your professional career development and growth. Making sure that you're having meaningful connections that can turn into lasting relationships. So that would involve making sure that you're a part of your network, whether it is scholarly activities, volunteering with organizations, making sure that you're a key part of your community, that you're investing in others, as well as investing in yourself. And for me, one of the most important aspects of my time with NOAA was making sure that I was involved in supporting the efforts of diversity and inclusion throughout the organization. Making sure that the voices were heard to build a pipeline for early career scientists, and that we were supporting those early career scientists as they moved to senior level scientists. But again, it's invaluable that you begin to cultivate your network and continue to do that throughout your career. And as an entrepreneur, your relationships are extremely important for you. You'll need to have the ability to reach out to your network, talk to them and communicate about what your goals and visions are, and continue to seek that mentorship as you move forward in your career. It's important to connect the dots. Now, one of the stories that I like to tell is a story where back in 2018, I received the NOAA Fisheries Employee of the Year. In that same month, I decided that it was time for me to transition as an entrepreneur. Not because my experience with NOAA was one that wasn't a positive experience. It was because I understood the culture of NOAA, the mission of science, services, stewardship. And I simply wanted to expand that in order to impact others in a different way. My time at NOAA was fulfilling. One, where I had the opportunity to interact and engage and still do with colleagues. I'm excited about the opportunity to improve and increase the pipeline that we have for underrepresented minorities in the STEM field. But I wanted an opportunity to do that by creating a company that was focused on that in this area. So I needed to really understand the culture of NOAA and understood where I fit in, but understand that this was a transition in my life that I needed to make and accept it as a normal part of change. Identify those values and life goals that were going to be fulfilling to me and hopefully help to increase the pipeline. I didn't rush the process, although it was very uncomfortable, but I leaned into my support network. That's why it's so important to make sure you're building that network so that when you need it to lean on, it's there to support you. It's very important to acknowledge what you've already accomplished, right? And to move forward at your own pace. Don't be afraid to embrace the risk. Now, working with a team of professionals and leading that team every day has been so rewarding. I embrace the risk now and I enjoy the ride. And I'm happy to say that our company, EcoAlpha Environmental and Engineering Services, is one that supports women in STEM, minorities in STEM, and making sure we're building and helping to support a pipeline of young STEM professionals in the industry. It's extremely important to lead in this way, to give back to your community, to make sure that you're impacting in ways that align with your vision as well as your values. Making sure that you're continuing to build the knowledge, that you understand your role wherever you are, to cultivate your network, connect the dots, transition as a part of life, understand that it's normal, and to embrace risk with proper planning. Don't be afraid to lead the way as you start on your career journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melanie, for that wonderful presentation. And moving right along, because we are short on time, we're going to welcome PJ Johnson to the forefront.
All right, let me get this up here. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to take part in this forum. I'm very honored to be here. Let me just go and give you brief about myself. I'm William Pernell Johnson, PJ. I graduated from high school not too far from Tallahassee, just across the border in Bainbridge, Georgia. And upon graduation, I went to Savannah State University. And that's not me, that's one of our most famous alumni, Shannon Sharp, Hall of Fame football player. When I enrolled at Savannah State, I originally started studying sociology. I wanted to be a social worker. However, my freshman year, when I started taking biology classes and some of the other technical STEM classes, my interest peaked, and I changed my major from sociology to environmental science. And I graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Science with a minor in chemistry. While at Savannah State, I had the opportunity to participate in a Department of Energy Savannah Riverside internship, where I was able to participate at the high radioactive waste facility and solidifying nuclear waste for destruction at in the Yucca Mountains. So this is actually the facility that I worked in. Again, that piqued my interest and solidified my decision in switching majors and switching over to science technologies field. Upon my graduation, I enrolled at Florida A&M in the Environmental Science Institute, where the current president, Dr. Robinson, was along with Dr. Miles. He was our faculty advisor and dean, and to this day we have a good friendship. He was an excellent mentor. Learned a lot from him. While there and under his leadership, I returned to Savannah River site. Here, I was able to participate in what they call the P and R area. They had a strontium-90 plume. I was able to participate in the hydrologic study of that plume migration to see if it would affect the drinking water of the local town of Barnwell, which is just off this map here, to see if it would affect their drinking water. Very, very intense program and study. It was a year of research going back and forward to perform aquifer tests to complete this study. Upon graduation, I took that knowledge and started working for the Department of Florida Environmental Protection in their Petroleum Peer Program, where we went out and pretty much assessed and remediated petroleum impacted facilities throughout the state of Florida. Here's an example of some of the field work that we participated in, identifying the extent of the contamination in soil and groundwater. And here's an example of a source removal that we did to address the contamination. And here's an example of some of the treatment, the air sparge, soil water vapor extraction methods that we use to clean up a site. It's not included on this side. I didn't want to get dinged from the city of Tallahassee, but one of the projects I worked on is not too far from FAM right now, the Cascade Park, the amphitheater. That was a petroleum impacted site that I was part of remediating early on in my career. From that, moved on to technology where we perform compliance testing of the underground storage tanks and above ground storage tanks to ensure that clients and everyone's were in compliance with their petroleum storage and hazardous tank management. From there, networking, as has been mentioned earlier, that is key to this field. I landed an opportunity with US Ecology as a hazardous waste technician, getting rid of hazardous waste from retail facilities. And a lot of these products that are just household items, but when you get rid of them from a disposal standpoint, they are hazardous because of their waste characteristics, flammable, corrosive, reactive. So on that aspect, I would like to mention when you start looking for your career paths and opportunities, don't be afraid to think out of the box, because a lot of these companies, your Walmarts, Publix, Target, Amazon, they are looking for environmental professionals to keep them in compliance and also to help them get rid of their waste. From there, I became a account manager at Univar Solutions, where we help one of North America's leading cable companies with their zero landfill policies. They did not want any waste to go to the landfill. So we set up the program where we did source reduction of their waste that was generated, increased their recycling process, and reduced their offsite treatment. And if they had any waste, we send it to waste to energy and not landfill to decrease their carbon footprint. And finally, my current position as Waste Service Director at ERTS, where we respond to emergency response for train derailments, wrong side accidents. We have to get rid of the waste that are generated from those, along with if some shipments are not done properly, we get rid of those wastes. And we had an uptick with the bad weather in Texas and floods. We always get a lot of calls from damaged goods and just people getting rid of things and oil water separators. So the environment and the climate not only affects the coastal and estuarines environments. It also affects the commerce. And that's it. It's to the point.
Thank you so much. So in respect of time, we're going to have to end the session here, but I want to give a special thank you to the panelists for their time and for sharing their journeys and insights with everyone. The success of the EPP MSI program thrives off of your continued success, and we sincerely thank you for continuing to support the program and the students who are following in your footsteps. The EPP MSI program serves a unique role, and we are, as we've heard this morning, the program has had significant impacts on national demographics of STEM professionals. As a program, it is our goal to continue to provide support for training and education of students to ensure that we have a highly qualified and diverse pool of candidates to exist primarily for NOAA's future workforce, but also for the NOAA mission enterprise workforce as well. I hope that students were enlightened by the contributions of each of the speakers. And as I mentioned, we regret that time has restricted our ability to address your questions. We have a number of questions that were submitted ahead of time, but we promise to address each of those questions and provide responses to them via email. Contact information for each of the speakers will also be shared in that communication. So if they said anything that resonates with you, be sure to reach out to them. As you've heard several times from the speakers, that it's important to start to build your network. So now is the time. So I want to thank everyone for attending and enjoy the remainder of this exciting event. I believe next we have a break prior to the invited student talks.